Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode on Founders Tribe, a podcast production presented by thestartupchef.com. This is once again your host, Sven Milder, and like every week, I invite inspiring global movers and shakers to the show to casually chat about successful strategies they have deployed to found and build awesome businesses and live fulfilling lives. At the Startup Chef, we are on a mission to elevate and inspire 100,000 founders globally to help them shortcut their road to success by offering easy access to investment capital and world-class expertise. If you want to discover more or download one of our free resources that can help you propel your business forward, visit us at thestartupchef.com. thestartupchef.com. In today's show, Mr. Jakob Rost, the CEO and co-founder of IOConnect, Indonesia's first open bill network offering over 2,500 bill products across 20 categories through one API. Before building this, Jakob was a management consultant for the Boston Consultancy Group with projects in banking and financial services, where he moved quickly after from Berlin to Indonesia around 7 years ago to become the Managing Director of Lazada. Jakob built Lazada's marketplace from 0 to 70% of GTV and managed geographical expansion all over Southeast Asia. In today's episode, we are really going to talk about how to lead a company remotely in the COVID area. I enjoyed it. It was warm-hearted and it truly packed with golden nuggets that you as a listener can leverage. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and get entertained with Mr. Jakob Rost. Okay guys, welcome at another show, The Founders Tribe, where every week we invite the movers and shakers globally, people that I think that are very worthwhile listening to, and where I really hope that you will pick the inspiration from their brain to make better decisions in life and in business. Today I have here my good friend Jakob Rost to be very precise, and I'm super thrilled to have him here. We share actually one thing really in common is we all landed up as Europeans in Asia. We know each other now for I think around 4 years or something. We still look very good. That's definitely the thing that really matters. Welcome to the show, right? We are here in the Bali vibe, chill with on our bare feet, and I hope that we can really bring some interesting insights to the show. Can you tell me a little bit what brought you in the first place here to Bali? So not to Indonesia, but to Bali.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. The big supporter of the podcast. I've been probably listening to most of the episodes.
Okay, cool.
Really love what you're doing here. And what brought me to Bali? It was supposed to, Jakarta is in lockdown. That's normally where I'm based. And we kind of were like, how do we escape the mayhem there? And we came here for a week, and now that week turned into, I think, 3.5 weeks, and we'll just take it week by week and see where this leads us. Thankfully, we have all the tools and processes in place to work remotely, like I think everyone else by now.
Yeah.
So it's fun to actually try that out in practice. It's one thing to be at your home, the other thing is to be somewhere else. So pretty cool.
I think that always, especially in the last episodes that we did, is a returning topic, because there was this moment where we have more like innovative companies that are really looking forward and think, okay, how can we make our organization really remote?
Yeah.
And then we have already talked about it a lot. We have these guys like, okay, why not just work remotely full force?
Yeah.
And I still remember that we were chatting about it, that when you actually planned to come here and when this whole corona epidemic broke loose, that you actually already told me, I was actually more or less already ready for it, right? You were already busy integrating a remote lifestyle into your business. So I don't need to explain what is remote lifestyle, but how does this remote lifestyle works very beneficial for your current company, IOConnect?
Yeah. I think one of the, just going a step back, I love to have this talk in person, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is now on Zoom and remote, and this makes moments like this so much more special, you know? So I think it's not being on Zoom is not even the new normal anymore. It's really the normal by nowadays. So this kind of like feels very special. Very different to probably like 1 year ago where you would have done everything in person and maybe one every now and then on Zoom, I guess. No, so but you're right actually. Working like building a distributed or like more remote organization was actually always something high on my mind even before even COVID happened. I remember we discussed it somewhere I think end of last year. And to an extent, we always had that in IO Connect because we have already 2 offices since day one, basically. So we had to put tools and processes in place to at least coordinate, and our second office is in India. Our main office is in Jakarta. So there was already some sort of remoteness from the DNA from day one. But now it's interesting. How do you bring it a step further? How do you get to kind of having people not coming into office anymore at all? Maybe not even after COVID. And that's exactly where the kind of circle closes because those were the thoughts I had before COVID and discussed it at length. And now it's cool to see this actually happening in practice.
So what kind of tools do you really use that are beneficial for you?
So I mean, I have to admit, it's really the basics, right? I mean, we use Zoom, we use Slack, we use Loom video recording quite newly, so that's pretty cool to keep track of processes. And actually, one of our Q4 OKR is really to map out how can we go beyond that. I think we have a lot, sort of like the starter pack that everyone has, and now we need to bring it to the next level and really how can we actually excel at that and even become a better organization than we were before. And to some extent, that's already happening, surprisingly.
So what you're talking about the OKR, so what is the objective then? So you want to go merge from starter pack to most used, you know, if we're thinking about SaaS models in this case.
Right.
So what is the goal that you want to achieve in Q4 and what do you expect from your team?
So I think I haven't thought about the OKR. We're just in the process right now, but in my mind, it's something like become the best, remote organization in Indonesia or the best distributed workforce in Indonesia. I think we should really try to have an ambition to be the leader in the space. I feel a lot of companies at this stage now, they can't wait to get back to kind of how it was before. They're just counting the days. And for us, it's like, how can we actually do the next step, accelerate that process in that direction? And there's so much cool things you can do. Like I'm reading up a lot, like now companies do complete offsites remotely for 2 days, and they do, and the families involved, the kids play in the background, they do cooking sessions together where they mount the camera. But this, I think, is more and more to come. So how can we actually play a leadership role in that process? And that's exactly what we're going to figure out in the next quarter. And I mean, to an extent, I feel like, for instance, what we do is we have a daily leadership call at 9 a.m. in the morning. I do see my entire team at least for 10 minutes every morning, the entire leadership team. We ask questions, we update ourselves. That has
cameras on?
Camera on. That's things like this, right? The etiquette, if you will, right? Put your camera on, don't have it on the side, have it in front of you. And I always tell people, don't be shy. Like, we all live our homes are not perfect, like I know there's kids and family and who knows what, pets running in the background, there's noises. That's okay, that's cool. And now people sit on the balcony, some sit on their front yard, some are somewhere on the way to from A to B and stuff. And it's just, you embrace it, but you need to take that fear away from people to be always perfect and so on. And that's just internally, right? And then the next step is to embrace that externally. When we talk with partners and with clients, I'm still amazed how many times I'm in a Zoom call where it's just the names there, but at least from our side, everyone has the camera on, So I think you need to be the leader, and then eventually people will like, oh, okay, they don't look perfect, their background is not good, let me turn my camera on as well, and small stuff like this.
And I see really things advancing in that part. I mean, I was talking with one of my befriended investors like 2 weeks ago or something, and he had this massive, super sharp, almost DSLR image. And then I thought, like, okay, what is your webcam, right? What webcam? So how can I optimize how I present myself? And then he literally said, like, okay, I'm using indeed my expensive camera as a webcam. And therefore his whole image was looking way better. And that brings me actually to that's why I'm dialing this question in. It's almost very important. As an additional example, this morning I was talking with my Facebook marketeer. He is in the US, and he had these 2 guitars on the background. And what people see on Zoom is who they believe you are, right?
Yeah.
So how do you would like, and this is my question for you, if people could have a look in your Zoom room, what would you put on the wall to show people who is Jakob Rost? You got the question, right? It's like, okay, I thought he was you have 2 guitars? You're most probably a rock star. But if he would, and we had the conversation, if he would put the guitar on the wall, then it was a wannabe guitar player, never do something with it. If it's within hand reach, you know that someone is very passionate. So that brought me back to the question, how do we present ourselves through video communication in the best way, and how would you like to be seen in that?
I think the first question is even virtual background or no. That's already where it starts, you know. And I see already 2 camps happening, which is like people who love their virtual background and people who actually get a glimpse of my room. You know, I show who I am. I have to admit, I like to keep it clean and simple. So there's either just a picture or something I would do. I haven't done it yet, but it's just a bookshelf with a couple of like the favorite books in the past, right?
So you want to be seen intellectually.
Well, as you said, like a wannabe rock star, right? Yeah, so maybe you want to be like a wannabe intellectual or something. Yeah. I think that's probably the safe thing to do.
So we have books. What else? There's a clean space books.
There's books. I think with actually it's probably unavoidable. There would be a couple of kids' toys in the background.
Gives trust.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, work from home, family is apart, right? So that's there. Maybe a couple of pictures from just some of the vacations or something like this, so people see a personal side of you, and I think that's actually also quite interesting. Now it sort of blends, right? You don't have the professional me anymore and the personal me. It kind of it really blends, right? So and that's great. That's what builds communication and trust and all of that.
Yeah, interesting. Now I really like it in that sense that we are becoming more aware who we are, and especially because there's the online component, connecting with our team. But even as well, if I do investment deals, there is possibility to just easily close a $500,000 or $1 million round strictly over the phone, right? Yeah. I mean, there's of course a preparation that went before that. So in terms of the remote working, what is currently not working for you in that specific? So if we are making the comparison between before and after, and now you want to grow to the next level, what is currently something that you're missing, or something that is just not working really as oily, as flexible as you want?
I think that's more on us, right? I mean, it can be fixed, but what I realized is it's a bit like a pyramid, For me, as the CEO, I kind of like figured out how do I communicate effectively with, the leadership and the management team. What I realized is I actually overlooked a little bit the organization as a whole. So now that's exactly, it's like, how do we bring it to the next level in terms of town halls? We did an AMA recently. And so all of those things are very doable. It's just you have to do them, and then basically if you update a topic with the leadership team, how do you bring it on a bigger format? We started actually recording the first couple of sessions, and we give people the option, dial in or not. If your internet is crap at the time, here's the recording, But if you want to participate and ask questions, that's the time slot, And all of this is new for us as an organization, new for anyone, but I think it's fun,
Do you believe someone should almost have a separate role for that in your organization?
It's interesting because we have a communication and brand department, and that was always very externally focused.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now, just without realizing, they have actually gotten more involved internally. Yeah. And it's this question: is it actually an HR kind of KPI, or is it a communication KPI? And it's probably somewhere in between, And I see that right now it's getting driven from both sides. But the biggest hurdle, I think, what's not, coming back to your question, what's not really working internally, is to really get that switch mentally. So we have all the tools, anything can be done. But for anyone who has worked for more than 2, 3, 4 years in an organization that did things physically, it's like how do you get it now to the digital kind of like to remote age, you know? And that's more a mental switch, and that goes through all the organization, you know, where people that starts with the camera turning on, with doing a recording instead of writing a lengthy email, and those kind of things. And I think, I mean, if we catch up a year from now or 6 months from now, like I'm sure all of this is fixed, but right now it's a process. No?
I think it's also a lot about. This sounds very spiritual and romantic, but it's also about following your heart in this thing, right? You know, sometimes even if you're on Slack, I trap myself into having whole messages over Slack when I think like it's very easy to just pick up the fucking phone and just call and get it done, right? And when I was hiring some new roles, you find out that it's super important right now to spend a lot of time on writing your culture documents and knowing that if you attract new talent, are they very good in Asana? Are they comfortable in presenting themselves in front of the camera, right? So that people know before they start, they need to fit in this new cultural remote kind of work. Because what you will see, there are certain people that are just a little bit reluctant to go with the new current, right?
Yeah, that's totally right. I think some people love it, some hate it. Yeah. But it's the way it is, and that's where you say, right? Starting with culture is pretty important to make it clear from day one. This is who we are. This is how we want to operate. And I think a big misconception is also the remote work is not less communication. It's actually more communication. Yeah, that's how it starts. Just because you don't see each other, you need to actually feel like you over communicate a bit. You know, to keep those links together and keep the personal relationships and onboarding. I mean, the first, like if you think about it, the first 2-3 months of COVID were okay because everyone still knew each other, you know, but now it's been 7-8 months into the game, and you like all of a sudden you have 10 plus people on your organization who completely joined during that time, you know, they had never a chance from their side to meet the rest of the team, and the other way around. But it works, but then how do you do that, right? And you actually do it better than before. Before the guy was walked around from desk to desk, shaking hands, you know. Now we ask them fun questions. They actually share a bit who they are, what they did before in front of the organization. It's recorded. There's a team Trello, all of this stuff. So it's actually better, you know. So that's I think that's the objective here, to make it better than it was before and not make it feel like right now there's friction in the process.
So let's talk about the financials. Let's talk about the financials. So since you're doing the the remote working, is it easier? Has your revenue stayed stagnant, spiked, dropped? Are, in this sense, for example, the closing deals, do you have problems with that? You know, there's also a financial side of it, right? Do you plan financially to reduce your office cost because people are not coming, and you use that money, for example, for that 2-day or 3-day outing every 4 or 5 months? Because it brings all of the people more together. But we need to bring the people together into a live environment sooner or later. You know, so I'm just how do you play with that? We're now playing with the tools, the strategies, the culture, but how is the impact financially for deal making and for reducing cost?
Okay. So on the whole, moving completely remote, I do believe it's not for cost reasons. Like, we're not doing this to save costs. I mean, in the best case, it's the same cost. Because you do invest in tools, and we're going to come up with new policies, like anyone can now get kind of like a decent internet connection from the company, for instance, right? Or anyone who is still wants to be in a co-working space post-COVID because they really like to get that kind of environment where they can focus and so on. The company should actually pay for that. And so and then, but on the other hand, you basically reduce your main headquarter office size. That's an interesting thing, right? Just moving remote does not necessarily mean no office. So we will, the way we think about it is that we keep an office for 3 reasons. The first one is still as a co-working space. So as a company, we provide the opportunity to get decent infrastructure, to be in an environment where, there's an AC, there's a coffee machine, there's proper desks, there's internet connection and so on. So if you feel like home, and for some of our employees, home is not the best place to be productive and work, you can still come to the office, so that's there. The second thing is we do have still a lot, and you mentioned, client facing and we are B2B, right? So we do have a lot of meetings still where people sometimes from the other side, there's 10 people who come, and they want to sit around a big board meeting kind of table, and from our side as well. So maybe building those personal relationships in the first place is not a bad thing, and then you can take it remote. But for that, you don't need to be in the office all the time. You have a Monday morning meeting, and that's when you're coming for in the office. And the third one is a bit like representative, I would say. I think this is going to go away, but still, our clients are big public companies sometimes, and also investors and so on. So at least there is still something. There's a logo on the wall. I would say. So office cost is there. All of a sudden, you have the remote cost on well, right? So you need to balance both sides. So it's not
your rent is already paid.
Yeah, exactly. But then maybe after. But so it's people always say, okay, now you save cost. You don't have to pay anymore for office and AC. It's not the case, know. So how do you? In the best case scenario, it's equal as it was before. Maybe we move to a smaller space. And in terms of the business performance, we were lucky because we are in digital payments, and that was one of the clear winners of the whole situation. So we have actually had a really good year
because everybody starts doing online payments, online activations, and therefore it goes through your channel.
Yeah, and I think also in terms of awareness, all of a sudden we get approached, we get inbound requests from companies that all of a sudden their KPI is to transform their digital processes and move to digital payments and then cash collection and accounts receivables to figure that piece on and move beyond what they just have. Like some of our customers, they literally only have offline agent force that knocks door to door, or they have their own stores where people pay every month, and that's, I think, gonna shift. That has actually accelerated.
Interesting. So I would like to move a little bit away from the remote and the impact on the financial side. Before we started the chat today, it's like you have actually not long ago closed your previous financing round, and now you're gonna start a new financing round, which will be remote. So what's your strategy?
It's interesting because you mentioned you closed, what was it, 100 to 500K deals?
No, of course we're closing way more than that, but it's like a $500,000 to $1 million deals can be closed.
Yeah. And I think that's the trend, right? If you go the funnel, the early stage deals where checks get not written easier, but kind of probably more frequent. I see that happening. I talked to a couple of VCs, and I think everyone was waiting for 3-4 months to figure it out. They realized, okay, it's not going to change anytime soon. We still need to have deal flow, so they kind of shifted there. Now we're a bit of a more mature company, so the ticket
size should be easier, actually.
Do you think so?
So one of my clients from Bangladesh, Shaldal, they just raised a large round as well. Ilya, who was previously also here in the podcast, raised also a round, because eventually the investor is looking for to see how they can de-risk the opportunity, right? Now, and what do you have rather? A company without any historical records, or you would like to have a company who's already just like you, 4 years in business? So it should work in your favor.
It's true. There's more data to be looked at. I think what's becoming increasingly important is just your reputation and your network that you have in the community. And we approach Series B, so you're not starting to talk to those guys like first meeting and so on. You actually you have a track record, you have met before in person and so on. And just if it would happen that we would meet someone new, they would for sure ask for kind of like recommendations, or they just ask around the network. Hey, like, are you connect? Who are the guys? Have you worked with them before and so on? And I think, as always in business, right, this network is really important, and let's see where this goes. I'm curious myself how this will work out.
Happy to help you, by the way.
Awesome.
It's very funny that the red thread through this chat today is remote, and we talked about having your Zoom room in place, which is very important for your fundraising, of course. That brings me, how do we design our online profiles? How do we design our online authority? There's many things how you do that. We come back to that later. But how do you decide for a B2B company to still be sexy and wanted? And I mean, the first thing an investor will do is Google, and then you want to pop up. So you need to have a very strong online presence in order to get that benefit of the doubt, or otherwise that additional confidence and trust. So the checks are being written easier. But just in generally, I'm very curious, how do you as a B2B company right now envision that you can put yourself great on the map?
Yeah. So B2B, I mean, people think it's business to business. I think it's completely wrong. It's not a company doing business with a company. It's people to people.
Yeah.
And in B2B, for the lack of a better word, it's more important than ever what are the kind of people you do business with. Because as a B2C company, that's where, the perception and the product matters first and foremost. So you don't really care who's the founder, who's the team behind it, because you love the product so much, and that's what matters. For us, I think it's basically our clients, they like to do business with us because they like us as people, and that's not Jakob or Chirac, my co-founder, or Adi and Alex, the rest of the C-level team. That transcends throughout the entire organization, basically on a management level, on a staff level. There's so many touch points outward facing. Each of this little touch point is important and adds to your overall reputation as an organization. So I think people first, because there is much more direct communication in B2B. And then the second layer is kind of like, what's the website? What's kind of like the rest around it? How do you present yourself through your social media and so on? That's kind of almost like it fits the picture, it adds on to the overall image.
It makes the decision easier to work with.
Yeah, but it's like, that nice layer around it, but it starts with the people. That's important.
So having a good referral network, spending a lot of time on your after sales is crucial actually right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what is important in B2B is top of mind. So when people need a solution, that's normally how it starts. They reach out to you. So they need to know that you exist in the first place. Probably on your side is the same, right? People are not fundraising all the time, but when they do, they remember Sven is my guy to go to, he's going to help me get that sorted out. And then the second thing is, once they reach out, how do you interact? So, and it's the small stuff that matters where, and especially in Asia, right? Everything is very community and referral driven. So how many times have you been in a WhatsApp group where people ask, hey, do you know a good company that does X, Y, Z? Yeah. And there might be 5 companies out there, but what's the company they refer to and why? Because they had a great service before, they were treated right, people were responsive when they wanted something through all the communication channels and stuff like this. So that's really what matters at the end of the day. And then the product and the tech needs to be good, of course, right? That's still our core business, but it's not just that. The rest is important.
I have a lot of respect from where you're coming from. You started in Berlin. You went eventually to Indonesia. You led Lazada. You left that at a certain moment. You have been going into IO Connect. That's all brilliant stories, right? And we see as well here a brilliant man. But can you walk us through more like the challenges that, if you look back currently, what would you consider be a tough period in your life?
I think it defines a bit what you consider tough,
What do you consider tough?
I think what drives me is to overcome those challenges. I love building things, just to start with. And building something new is actually always tough. It's never easy, very few occasions. So coming to Indonesia, and I was, when I was in Lazada, I was the managing director for Marketplace, which basically means open up the platform to third-party merchants, which is now common, which now, makes up 80% plus of e-commerce businesses. At that time, it was fairly new. Everything was done through their own warehouse. And Lazada style was like, you get a tap on the shoulder. Here's 2 people to support you, and you figure it out, And by the way, we're going to measure you every single week on how that, that department performs. That was tough in a sense, but it was also super fun, because I just love trying out things, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. And if it works, you scale it up, I don't like having people who tell me what to do all the time, and that's why I wanted to move more entrepreneurially anyway. from more the professional services background that I had in Europe. And that was a great environment, even though it was very tough. I worked harder in the early days of Lazada than I worked in BCG, and that's considered a tough place to start with. Yeah. And when you have your own startup, then all of a sudden it's a whole different story, because versus before, yes, you take care of a very important department of that organization. Now you take care of all departments more or less, and then you figure, I mean, you know it, right? You work with founders all the time, fundraising, internal culture, product market fit, there's not a day that goes by where there's not a constant challenge, we discussed about this before. It's like you as a founder always, you get all the problems first, and I think that's tough, but I'm not considering it tough. For me, those were still fun.
So so let's say if you identify as something challenging, do you bring it home, write it into a journal, write it on a whiteboard? Do you have mentors where you're connecting with?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a way how we fix the sink, Yeah. What is your way of fixing the sink?
For me, I am probably a bit more on the introvert kind of way of solving things. So I like to do things with myself. I need a quiet space. I need to kind of figure something out. I like to have a blank sheet of paper and just, not even write, but draw things. Try to
Every founder is actually an artist.
Yeah. The problem is I can't read my own notes after I draw them down. It's a different. So that's kind of where it starts, to kind of give me sort of like a piece of state. And the second thing then, of course, is discuss it with the right people. If you have your own company, it really makes sense to have that co-founder that you can discuss everything with, there's this psychological effect. Just basically naming your problem and kind of putting it from thoughts into words already actually gives you more clarity in the first place. It's amazing how this.
I have that even with my girlfriend also. Sometimes she's saying, "What are you so complicated? You're froncing with your forehead," and then you tell it, and she comes very easily back with a solution. Like, okay. I think even you can stick so long for a while things in your mind, while if you just throw it all out, writing is sometimes not even good enough. So that brings me maybe to the point, should we all have a mentor or an advisor, or do you have a mentor or advisor? Actually someone who you regularly check in with?
I would love to have one. I'm still looking for one actually. I haven't found one so far. But that's not entirely true. I mean, there's not that one guy that I go to all the time, but there's kind of like that network of people where when it comes to that kind of problem or that area, this guy is very good. And this guy is very good. But then I think it's more around the professional kind of aspect, less on the kind of personal side, And I mean, it will happen eventually, As I say, I also believe this is something you should not really force, If it clicks on both sides, then that's great. But basically having kind of come to where I am now without that is actually putting me in a position where I realize how much that would have helped, or how much I would have loved to have a mentor in some situations. And now I'm getting approached by some people who have worked previously with me or so on, who actually feel that need. And I'm happy to kind of help on that advisory level, That's pretty rewarding as well, because you really, that knowledge transfer is for real. And you see, you have a 10-minute conversation with someone and he's like, okay, this completely changed the way I now think about it. It's so much clearer now, And you're thinking to yourself, okay, that was 10 minutes. This could have been solved. It took me like 2 days back when I was there to figure that one out.
So one of the strategies that I really like to do is if I'm stuck at picking up my iPhone and I put on my record button, and I just start talking to the iPhone, everything what's in my mind, because I don't want to bother my girlfriend always with it. Otherwise, it's not good for a relationship. And then later on, you listen to it again. And then you are more listening like we're listening to the radio. It's like a third person. And then it's like, okay, my voice sounds a little bit strange here. And why am I so emotional there? But by listening to yourself, it gives you suddenly insights.
It's interesting.
It's very interesting for a reflection moment.
But you do that when it's fixed, just to kind of recap, or even while you're still in that situation, you just give it some space and disregard it.
Because I want to avoid I really want to avoid that we bring stuff into our mind.
Yeah.
I think I was listening to an audiobook somewhere this week, and I hear this, it's not really a quote, it's more like a statement, and they say we should use our brain not as a data warehouse, but more as a processor, right? So we don't want, especially right now, we don't want to store everything what we know in our brain.
Yeah.
No, we want to know where do we get the answers. So that could be through a network of advisors or mentors, or it could be through self-reflection, and we want to use our brain, keep it as empty as possible as a processor instead. So when something difficult comes, we can just straight away
I'll try it out. I'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah.
But you discovered it, or you picked it up somewhere?
No, I discovered it.
Nice.
I was actually looking for ways to just not bother other people. It's the same like sometimes I can say I hate it when people say they're asking me questions, while if they would do some research, they would find it themselves. Sometimes also people in the team, they ask you a question, and the answer is already there, right? So by sharing it with somebody else, actually Steph was more or less the inspiration, because a lot of times I share it to her and I know already what the problem is. So it means that we keep too long stuff in our mind.
So I think, but that's again, that's I realize why probably I don't like to reach out to people as often as I should to, because I feel like if I just put enough thought into it, or I research it long enough, I will figure it out. I will find the answer. I don't want to bother other people with the things. And interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, and meanwhile, you're also combining all of this hustle with being a father of a very young daughter. Meanwhile, you have also a little bit of a celebrity status online, with the most 15,000 people who are following you as a super daddy and Mrs. Cool. So how is that? How is those two lives combining each other?
How is being a daddy? So I think everything changes and nothing changes.
Yeah.
It's a weird one to explain. Of course, your world is completely different, like all of this, and it's a phenomenon. I love being a daddy. It's actually more rewarding than I thought it is. When my wife was pregnant, it kind of like, I was busy with the company and I really didn't have time to digest that. Actually, there's, in addition to the family coming anytime soon. And then once it's there, you figure it out, and then maybe that's the right thing to approach it without going too crazy. And now it's fun, It's just amazing to have the little person and see the development, and it's again, it's like something that grows, It's like a startup, or it's like there's always new additions, new things happening. It's super cool. I would not call myself a celebrity or even a public persona, because even though
it was also a little joke, but
it's like tiny compared to the guys, and that's not even my KPI. But actually, what happened is, it's a cultural development, if you will, because in Germany we are like, you just don't open up yourself at all. Business is business and work is work, and even the concept of hanging out with your colleagues after work is already really weird, And using WhatsApp for a business related purpose is also weird. Like everything is still done on email. It's super like there's actually studies around it, social and then coming to Asia, everything is completely open, right? Everything is like as I've mentioned earlier, the lines between private and professional, they blur. You're actually one persona. You're not two personas. You're not Jakob the CEO and you're not Jakob the daddy. It's the same person at the end of the day. And what I realized, people want to participate in that. It's very welcoming. They want to know, who are you basically on your weekends, right? And how do you spend your free time, and what keeps you busy? And that's where, I have to say that maybe my wife kind of pushed me a bit to go there. And I was eventually, either I do it or I don't do it. But if I do it, I might as well do it properly, Then and that's kind of like where it came together. So it's a journey for me personally to and it's not just on Instagram, it's also more on LinkedIn and so on. And again, right, as I said, B2B is about people. So people want to know, Jakob, if I have a problem with Jakob is the guy to go to, for IO Connect. And I think that's interesting, and it's actually working out quite well.
I think it means that it works in your favor, because generally I was researching I'm researching a lot about online authority, especially for the programs that we're doing and helping founders grow their online authority. One thing is important. If you see, for example, Elon Musk, right? And you see Tesla. Elon Musk has way more followers than his company Tesla, right? And this is Richard Branson and Virgin, right? Yeah. Richard Branson has way more followers than he has on his Virgin thing. So coming back to your statement where you see like, okay, being human, being actually, it's not a B2B, it's a P2P. Yeah. And P2P in business also allows you that you're showing your real self, right? That you're showing really who you are as a person. People don't only want to do business with IO Connect. Now people want to do business because it's the DNA and the culture that you throw into it. I guess that becomes more and more important.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's and it makes you approachable. That's what I learned. It's people have those questions, right? They wanna participate in what you're building, why you're building, how did you start it, what's the challenges, all of this. So why not let them in on that journey? You know, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is a journey. I think also there's a very practical aspect of it. It's like, as I mentioned, I do tend to have my more introvert moments. So just on a Monday morning, instead of 20 people asking you, how was your weekend and all of this, they already know, you know, oh, you did do this, you did that and so on. So it kind of gives me a bit of quiet time as well. It's quiet space. So that's a nice kind of practical side of it.
Yeah. Well, you also need to, right? Because normally in the night your little kid is waking up, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
So another question, which is maybe very personal, in line with what we're talking about, real, right? And you being a daddy right now. I mean, you're raising a company and you're raising your small little baby. So what are the things that you have been missing in your childhood that you believe are important to give to your daughter? So what are the things that you have been missing? Or I don't want to say missing. Missing sounds a little bit negative, right? But more like the things that you would love to have at that time, that you think like, okay, these are such an important values, because now you have the chance as a dad to give it through, right?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I cannot complain about my childhood. I had a really amazing childhood. Like, we had a big house. It was lots of green space around it. It's great until you're like 14 years old, and then you miss a bit more the city life or something. Then you start hating it. But until then, like, everything was good. But I think kids nowadays grow up very differently. And I mean, if you see an 8-month-old baby knowing how to use TikTok, it's insane.
That happens,
Of course, right? I mean, you cannot avoid it. Like, they play the YouTube, they know how to. One of the first things is they know how to swipe and so on. And just basically also traveling. I think I was 16 years old when I first was on a plane in my life, you know, and Althea was like 2 months old, you know, when she was first on a plane. So I think I mean, we're also very privileged, right? So this is a special environment. But I think if I were to go back and see what was one of the things where I would have loved it, it's probably learning a second or third language from day one, you know, and for me, I'm
well, that's easy, right? With you have a mixed kid. So.
No, exactly. I mean, you still need to push it as a parent. I see enough parents, they just don't want to kind of emphasize on that or go through the hustle. And I think it's such a missed opportunity. So you need to still pay attention to it. But that's something I didn't have. And I'm not really talented with language. It's just more a will thing through me, you know. I get there eventually, but I need to put a lot of time and effort and will into it. So just English took me quite a while, and now I'm learning Indonesian, and that is I do believe other people are faster than that, but it's just but I mean, I don't want to speak that, right? There's really that kind of intrinsic motivation is there, and that would have made life much easier if you have that from day one.
Especially here in Indonesia as well, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And so that's one thing on the surface, right? But I would like to know more. So what are other things that you really want to give to your child, which you think is very important for their grown up?
It's funny, right? There's two cultures, right? Mom is Indonesian, dad is German, and the way of raising a child are very different. And we've always found common ground. But it's more entertaining to see like how it can be done, and my approach is very just do it, just figure out the world on your own. Every now and then you're going to fall. Every now and then you're going to touch a bit of dirt. It's okay, play in the sand and so on. And not so much my wife, she has come to terms, but probably like the Indonesian community as a whole is probably a bit more protective around this kind of stuff.
I noticed it already with the dog, right?
Yeah. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, it's just different approaches, and so that's kind of like where it's more entertaining to see how it can be done at the end of the day. Yeah.
So one thing that worries me a little bit, have you seen The Social Dilemma?
No, I don't think I have.
Yeah, no, you should. So if it gets a rainy day here in Bali, which is quite unlikely, but a lot of times actually after 11 o'clock, there's this new Netflix documentary which is called The Social Dilemma.
I'm always getting my Netflix recommendations from you, right? So that's next
I hope
on
you
list.
like that. So the Social Dilemma is where Facebook, of course, is in the spotlight, and how data is being used in a way that Facebook can predict what we need based on their AI algorithms, etc. Right? So you're just sharing that your little daughter of 2 knows how to use TikTok, right? Now, I think one of the key things that we have is that I still remember that I was playing in the forest, building all kinds of tree houses, running home to get a lemonade, ice cream. I mean, it sounds very familiar for you as well. But the kids nowadays are just growing up completely different, right? And where we use social media, we don't use the social media as, let's say, someone who's 11 years old right now.
Yeah.
Or bring it to an extreme, like your daughter, who is now 8 months and 1 year.
No, she's 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
And she already knows how to do TikTok. So indirectly, it means that the big data factories know exactly later on what your daughter is all about, what she wants, what she doesn't like, what she needs, right? And there's a lot of discussion currently, especially after that Netflix documentary, if this is a great world to live in, right? Because the goal of a Facebook is truly to make money, and the only way they make money is because of the advertising.
Yeah.
And one of my friends said, like, okay, there is no such thing as a free product.
Yeah.
Everyone who orders a free product means they're monetizing your data, and the data gets being used. So if you have any opinion about how the data and the technology is taking a place into this world, how can you just share in generally, if that's a topic that you want to touch?
So my very personal opinion is that you cannot avoid it. You have to actually embrace it. I mean, if you cannot avoid it, then you should better embrace it. You know, you can avoid it, but that means you lock yourself up in the forest. And to exaggerate a bit here, I think what's important is that people are educated of how the business model of those giants work. You know, and I'm still surprised to find out now. I mean, Facebook is 10, 15 years old, and people still figure out, they're making money by advertising and by using my data. That should not be news anymore. So I think it's important to be educated, and then to give people a choice. How actively do I want to participate in that?
So
right?
let me correct it a little bit. So there's also true, but there's also one other thing is, if you see younger girls, I see it with the child of the daughter of my sister, through everything online, which becomes an online profile, which is a lot of times completely, it's a cosmetic profile. Everything looks amazing.
Yeah.
And she is 11 years old, and she gets very uncomfortable maybe the way she looks. So her whole brain starts working in a different way. Everybody starts comparing. Just like in the Social Dilemma, people are removing pictures from their timelines because they don't have enough likes. So it's more like, how do we protect our new generation also for getting completely screwed over, right?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 aspects for me to it. The first one is the role of the parents becomes very important here.
Exactly, yeah.
And that goes back to educating, right? Like, look, this is, in the worst case scenario, this is what can happen. You know, it's not just your friends watching, it could also be other people. They need to know how the stuff works, and they need to know it from their parents probably in the first place. educating is, and nothing is different there. Like you also tell your kids, don't play with fire, don't jump in the pool if you cannot swim, and you watch out that they don't jump in the pool. So you need to also watch out what they're doing on social media, and you need to educate them what can go wrong, right? So it's communication in the first place. The second point about how, getting kind of very winded up in that kind of like, how do I portray myself? I think, again, it comes back as well to education, because people do have to know that Instagram is a filter, right? I mean, also I'm not different there, right? You see Jakob drinking a coconut or meeting some important person or this or that. That's 2% of my time. The other 98, I'm sitting in front of a laptop doing Zoom calls and writing emails. There's nothing fancy about that, and that's just how this works. And again, people need to know about it, and I do believe there is actually a trend going to more authenticity, where it's like, hey, we're not all perfect, we're not always have a good day. We also we're just normal people at the end of the day. And I think there's almost like an anti-trend happening a bit on that side as well, and again, it's people. This is a theme of people today, it's like people, even no matter how many followers or how important you are, you're just at the end of the day a normal person. You have your normal problems, and you also think the guy who's crossing the street in front of you on a red traffic light has a better life or has less burden than you, right? Because it looks great from the outside, but once you're inside this guy's head, he has the same kind of he has his own problems and so on.
We need to stay sane.
And
we need to. I think that was one of the biggest thing. If you're if you feel uncomfortable or you have no confidence, right? That you feel, for example, if you're in a meeting or you had your first date, right? We make all of these things up in our mind that can go wrong, right? And just accepting that other people are just having their own problems, their own shit, and that everybody's just playing their role.
Yeah.
Today, Jakob is daddy. Tomorrow, he's the CEO. The other moment, he's a child of his parent, and all of the other roles.
And make mistakes and does stupid things every now and then. It's part of life, right? Yeah. The bigger story here is about perception, right? Like educating. It's going to be interesting. I mean, my daughter is not in her teenage years. There's going to be probably very challenging times ahead. So I'm really feeling for all the parents out there who go through that right now. But in the end of the day, it's also just, perception is important, but it's also not everything, And I think that is actually not too much different for when we were like 14, 15, 16 year old. We also wanted to look cool in the schoolyard and this and that and so on. Yeah. But it has probably the magnitude now through social media is much bigger, right? So it's even more important to actually raise individuals who are, strong and confident and self-motivated.
And that online is not a tool to get judged by them, that their self-worth comes from them, right?
And that's exactly so. It's part of the journey. If even the most likable people on this planet have haters on social media. So part of if you go step one, you need to go step two, right? First step of putting yourself out to is also that people eventually will always have something to hate about you or to criticize or something. So you need to ask yourself, are you okay with that? And you're very present on all medias, and I believe it's been a journey of you, right? So it's not a question of if, it's a question of for sure it's going to happen that people will criticize something,
And who gives a fuck?
Exactly. Exactly.
I think that also comes with age, right? That you don't really think about that. Okay, cool. So we are slowly reaching the end of the episode. Super cool conversation. But for people that would like to follow similar path like you, right? What do you think are the real takeaways from your career that every founder that would love to be successful, what are the things that you believe are very important, that if you incorporate them in your life, then it drives your success? So this is more like a list, by the way, we're going to post on social media later on.
Okay.
So you better make it a good one.
Wow, right? The pressure's on. So is it for life in general or for entrepreneurial?
No, I think everybody knows from themselves what's true and what's not true. What works, what doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And what are the things that have really been working for you very well, which you could advise other people to follow?
I think the first is really knowing yourself well. And that sounds easy, but it's actually very hard, and that's a long process. Most people don't really know who are they, right? They have an ideal of themselves, I would love to be an extrovert. I would love to be a social magnet or something, but in reality, they're not. And you cannot change your DNA. So you have to actually come to terms, who are you? And then you can basically build the building blocks of your life around it. You know, how do I work best? How do I make the best version of myself? Where do I want to improve? You know, so this is kind of like really getting that clarity. And that comes through different journeys, you know. And I did a lot of traveling when I was 18 for 2 years before I even went to university. I traveled. I figured a lot of stuff out there. That has so many implications almost for everything what you do. So basically, even what kind of career path, you know, do you want to, like, people or society tell you do this, but is this really what you want to do, right? So I think this kind of, understanding who you are. The second thing is, with that comes then that drive that kind of pushes you throughout everything. No matter what you do, becoming a doctor is not easy, but this is really what you figured out you want to do, you make it work. You know, being an entrepreneur, 99% is not that shiny, you know. It's just really hard work. It's long hours in the office. It's facing problems. But if you love doing that for the reasons that you figured out you want to do it, then you can push through those kind of dips in life, right? And
so we have the self.
Yeah,
and we have, be very clear identifying what is your why, so you can move yourself and your ass through the next one.
And the motivation. And I think the third is just a positive attitude towards life. Sounds very cliche. I know that.
This goes viral,
No, I mean, there's also nothing new there, right? I'm not the first one. But overall, if you go through life with a smile or a little bit more fun, don't take everything too serious, right? As we said, we all going to fall, we make mistakes, we stand up, don't take it too serious, you know? And that's the thing. People always take themselves more serious than anyone else. No one really gives anything about what, you know, this or that. Sven or Jakob is just 1% of anyone's out their life, and they look at us and then they switch to the next podcast or something else. But we take ourselves more serious than anyone else, right? And kind of like leaving that behind makes overall the approach to life much easier, I believe.
So I'm sorry, I'm gonna just ask you again. So we had the self, we have the why, we have the positive. So my conclusion here is that everybody can actually be successful like you did, right? Then what was the thing that took your career off? What was the thing where your career, your success within IO Connect, the moment that everything started coming together? Do you still remember that action or those moments? You know, there's certain things when everything start working more like as a hockey stick or as a, you know, there's momentum.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people would call those kind of moments luck, you know? It's like, hey, anything just worked out somehow. I believe luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So basically,
interesting.
A door opened and you got a chance, but you also were ready at that moment to go through that door. And, or you kind of wanted to find that door in the first place. And then, or you understand what I mean, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then basically, the opportunity you can only push so much, but the preparation you can push, and the preparation actually goes back to hard work at the end of the day. You know, there's nothing magic. Success is trying a lot, working really hard, being very dedicated, and not giving up and trying again and again, but also knowing what you're good at. You know, in a sense. So yeah, opportunity.
So that brings me to one of our other guests on the show, Andrew. Andrew said, like, okay, everything is created twice. So if I bring that back to your point where you say, like, okay, there's no such thing as luck, but it's typically being prepared to grasp the opportunity. Does preparation mean for you that you're creating things twice? And with creating things twice, I mean, are you very clear in your mind how things should look like before you go into action zone?
No, I think you can't map that out, right? That's what you don't know what that door is, but you have a broad idea, right? Where you want to bring your life or your company or your relationship or whatever it is. And then you need to be open and flexible enough to grasp it, right? When it happens. But people always, like, I think the key moments where things change is when, you know, that amazing opportunity came around, or they met that one person, or this worked out and so on. But they did their fair share. Nothing that would never have happened if you don't get out of the bed in the morning.
I think one thing that I would like to give to the audience that are listening as well is, I believe, and that's where the design of this question came from. A lot of my biggest deals have always come when I worked sometimes late, or I squeezed out that last email. You know, I didn't want to do anything, but I thought like, okay, let me just do it. You know, or sometimes, you know, at a late moment, coming back to someone, sending them that email or dropping them that WhatsApp. In other words, knocking the door of opportunity.
Yeah.
A lot of times that were the moments where things really start taking
Exactly.
off.
That's your preparation, that you write 20 WhatsApp messages, right?
Yeah.
And then that one guy who replies is the opportunity, you know,
it's
and
the
then
funnel
people
again,
would say that's luck, you know, because they kind of, when you look back, it's like, oh, without that one guy, I would have not gotten to where I am now. But you were the one who wrote those 10 WhatsApps in the first place, you know?
Yeah. So it's all about the funnel again, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man. I mean, we just get notified. We're already 60 minutes. Really cool conversation. I think we're touching on to a lot of valuable points that can be leveraged. Is there anything that you believe I have missed that the world should know?
I wanna keep it there. I think I love the conversation.
Okay. Awesome.
Thanks, Sven. Awesome show. So yeah.
Last thing is, where can people find you if they would like to connect with you? What is the Twitter handles? What is the LinkedIn handles?
No Twitter. So I'm focusing resources. So it's LinkedIn and Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for everybody who wants to check it out, LinkedIn is Mr. Jakob Rost, and I'm sure if you go to Jakob Rost as well on Instagram, you will find not only how he perceives himself in business on LinkedIn, but you get a taste of what this guy is doing in the weekend as well. Thank you very much for being in the contribution in the Founders Tribe. Today my guest was Jakob Rost. As every week, we are inviting the best game changers of Asia mainly to the show to let people really rock and roll. So stay tuned. See you in the next one. Jakob, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make magic every day. Thank you guys for tuning in today at the Founders Tribe podcast. I truly hope you have found some inspiration and the golden nuggets so you can leverage this to lift your founders game. By the way, if you want to stay updated about our weekly releases, then please hit the subscribe button so you will never ever need to miss out and choose which one of the guests you can tune into. If you're planning to raise capital for your startup and would love to discover if you are fundraise ready, if your startup has what it takes, then please take our free signature fundraise quiz, where we will benchmark your answers against our 9-step Date Your Investor framework. As a result, you will receive a 20-page tailor-made recommendation report to be better tomorrow. Want to find out more? Go to www.thestartupchef.com www.thestartupchef.com. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.